As tensions continue to rise in East Asia, the prospect of a military confrontation between China and Taiwan looms large in geopolitical discussions. Recent analyses indicate that while China's military capabilities are rapidly advancing, a large-scale invasion of Taiwan in 2025 is improbable. The Chinese government faces significant internal challenges that will likely temper its military ambitions despite its increasing military readiness and capabilities. China's military modernization has been notable with advancements across various domains. The People's Liberation Army (PLA) Navy is poised to expand its fleet to 395 ships by the end of 2025, including 3 operational aircraft carriers. This naval expansion is accompanied by enhancements to its amphibious capabilities, allowing for greater troop deployment and logistical support in potential conflict scenarios. Furthermore, the PLA now possesses the largest aviation force in the region, comprising new fighter jets and stealth aircraft that enhance its operational range. However, these improvements do not guarantee success in a conflict with Taiwan. According to U.S. defense officials, the PLA has yet to demonstrate the sophisticated urban warfare strategies and long-distance logistical capabilities necessary for large-scale operations in Taiwan. The lack of combat experience remains a significant hurdle for the Chinese military, which has conducted extensive training exercises simulating invasion scenarios but has not yet faced real combat conditions. Internal factors also complicate China's military calculations. The nation is grappling with demographic shifts, including an aging population and declining birth rates, which threaten its long-term stability. Additionally, economic challenges have emerged with local government debt and a wobbling real estate sector, creating a precarious situation. According to researchers at Rhodium Group, China's GDP growth in 2024 was only around 2.4% to 2.8%, significantly underperforming compared to the government's official target of 5%. Moreover, the political landscape in China is fraught with uncertainty. The recent leadership changes, including the removal of high-ranking officials due to corruption scandals, have raised questions about the effectiveness of the military command. These issues, combined with rising domestic unrest, will likely lead the Chinese leadership to prioritize stability over aggression. U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth recently stated that the potential for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan remains a pressing concern, particularly with Xi Jinping's expressed intentions to annex the island by 2027. However, the same internal pressures that complicate military planning will likely push the Chinese government to adopt a more cautious approach. In the coming years, Beijing is expected to maintain its pressure on Taiwan through coercive tactics rather than overt military aggression. This approach will likely involve continued military exercises and strategic posturing to demonstrate its capabilities without crossing the threshold into outright conflict. Looking ahead, the situation remains fluid. While military modernization efforts will persist, the Chinese leadership must carefully navigate the complex interplay of domestic pressures and international relations. As the 2027 deadline for military readiness approaches, Xi Jinping's decisions regarding Taiwan will be pivotal, balancing national ambitions against the necessity of maintaining social and economic stability. The world watches closely, aware that the dynamics in the Taiwan Strait could shift dramatically based on choices made in Beijing. In a revealing analysis published by the Financial Times, it has been highlighted that China's government spending on citizens significantly lags behind that of its economic peers. This discrepancy poses challenges for Beijing as it strives to stimulate domestic consumption amid a faltering economy, particularly in the wake of a major property market collapse. With a key parliamentary meeting set for next month where new economic targets and stimulus measures are expected to be unveiled, the urgency for reform is more pronounced than ever. Current data indicates that China allocates a mere 6% of its GDP to individual consumption services, encompassing essential areas such as healthcare and social security, while households themselves contribute a substantial 38%. This figure places China at a disadvantage compared to other upper-middle-income nations, including Brazil and Russia, and highlights a critical gap in social welfare spending. As Robin Xing, chief China economist at Morgan Stanley, succinctly put it, without deeper social welfare reform, people will keep all these precautionary savings instead of consuming. Economists are anticipating that in response to these findings, the Chinese government will increase its planned budget deficit from 3% to 4% of GDP, alongside an expansion of government bond issuance to stimulate growth. Premier Li Qiang has recently emphasized the need for domestic demand to play a dominating role in economic recovery efforts. However, analysts argue that any future spending must be strategically directed towards enhancing household consumption rather than traditional infrastructural investments. While China has made strides in expanding its social welfare system, extending pensions to rural populations and offering healthcare coverage to its vast populace, many benefits remain insufficient. The government's rural pension payments and health insurance provisions are often criticized for being inadequate, leading to widespread apprehensions about medical costs and retirement security. This situation compels many Chinese citizens to prioritize savings over spending, perpetuating a cycle of cautious consumer behavior. Comparatively, countries like the United States and Mexico, which allocate similar percentages of GDP to social welfare, still manage to achieve higher levels of private consumption. This phenomenon can be attributed to a more developed social safety net and a cultural tendency toward consumer confidence, as noted by Lin Song, chief economist at ING. In stark contrast, many Chinese retirees find themselves depleting their savings to supplement meager pension benefits, resulting in a generational mindset of financial caution. To effectively bolster consumer confidence, some experts advocate for immediate substantial investments into existing pension systems. Michael Pettis, a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace, argues that a dramatic increase in pension payouts could catalyze a significant uptick in consumer spending. "You really have to spend more money now," he stated, stressing the importance of addressing the immediate financial needs of retirees. As China grapples with these economic challenges, it must navigate the complexities of a changing global landscape, including the implications of its foreign policies. In a separate development, China has expressed its desire for the European Union to play a role in the ongoing peace negotiations concerning the Ukraine crisis. This contrasts with Russia's position, which has sought to exclude European influence from discussions. China's diplomatic overtures at the recent Munich Security Conference suggest a strategic pivot towards strengthening ties with Europe amid perceived shifts in U.S. foreign policy. The intertwining of domestic economic policy and international relations suggests that the coming months will be critical for China's economic trajectory, as the government prepares to unveil new measures. The effectiveness of these policies in fostering sustainable consumption and addressing social welfare inadequacies will be closely scrutinized. The outcomes of these initiatives could significantly shape both China's internal dynamics and its position on the global stage in the years to come. As the United States grapples with the complexities of its trade policies, threatening tariffs and erecting economic barriers, China is charting a different course by expanding its economic influence and solidifying its role as a global manufacturing powerhouse. This divergence in approach not only highlights the contrasting strategies of the two largest economies but also sets the stage for a new era of globalization. In a significant move, China eliminated all tariffs on imports from the world's least developed countries effective December 2024. Premier Li Qiang emphasized China's potential as a destination for global investment, positioning the nation as an accessible market for trade. This shift is underscored by China's burgeoning trade surplus, which reached nearly $1 trillion in 2024, and its share of global exports, which climbed to 14%, surpassing the United States' 8.5%. Such figures illustrate China's growing dominance in global trade, particularly with the Global South, where Chinese exports now exceed those to Western nations. China's Belt and Road Initiative exemplifies its strategic intent to become the epicenter of Asian trade, with infrastructure investments in approximately 150 countries. This initiative serves dual purposes: it circumvents American tariffs and diversifies Chinese markets. Currently, China produces 35% of the world's manufactured goods, a figure projected to rise to 45% by 2030 as per United Nations estimates. Despite facing an economic slowdown, China's GDP grew nearly 5% in 2024, reflecting its ability to transition towards a high-tech economy. By 2030, the nation is expected to cultivate a consuming class of 1.1 billion people, establishing it as the largest consumer market globally. However, this growth is juxtaposed with challenges including significant disparities in educational attainment and innovation, as only 7.8% of the population possesses a bachelor's degree despite producing about 65% of global STEM graduates annually. In stark contrast, the United States under President Donald Trump has adopted a protectionist stance, imposing tariffs on key trading partners including Canada, Mexico, and China. Trump's administration has already enacted a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum imports and has threatened to impose additional duties on various countries including Taiwan in an attempt to rebalance trade. Trump's strategy aims to revitalize American manufacturing and reduce the federal deficit. Yet critics argue that this approach could exacerbate economic instability and further alienate U.S. trade partners. Former Treasury official Brad Setzer warns that while Trump's tariffs introduce a layer of unpredictability that complicates international trade relations, the more significant threat may stem from China's strategic economic policies. Setzer notes that China's export-driven model creates a one-way trade dynamic where other nations become increasingly dependent on Chinese goods, potentially exposing them to economic vulnerability. This reliance on Chinese manufacturing raises concerns about the future of industries in countries like Germany and Japan, which have traditionally been export-oriented. Setzer highlights that China's production capacity, particularly in critical sectors such as automotive and steel, outpaces global demand, creating an environment where other nations find themselves at a disadvantage. Moreover, as the U.S. seeks to leverage its dollar dominance through sanctions and asset freezes, the BRICS nations are exploring alternatives to the dollar, signaling a potential shift in the global financial landscape. Trump's threats of retaliatory tariffs against countries moving away from the dollar further illustrate the tension between the U.S. and emerging economies. China's approach to economic management also contrasts sharply with the U.S. government's expansive consumer debt, which surpasses $53 trillion, including both national and personal debts. While the U.S. economy has thrived on consumption bolstered by the dollar's status as the world's reserve currency, China's economic model is increasingly characterized by industrial production and trade surpluses. As China continues to solidify its role as a manufacturing hub while the U.S. grapples with its economic policies, the global landscape is poised for significant changes. Countries worldwide will need to navigate the complexities of engaging with China's expansive industrial capabilities while attempting to safeguard their own economic interests from the unpredictable tariff policies of the U.S. The coming years will likely reveal how these dynamics will reshape international trade and economic relations, highlighting the need for adaptive strategies in an evolving global economy. In an increasingly complex geopolitical landscape, the United States faces mounting challenges in safeguarding its national interests, particularly against the backdrop of China's assertive maneuvers in the South China Sea and escalating tensions over Taiwan. As the Biden administration adapts its foreign policy, experts are calling for a comprehensive approach to defend vital information and military capabilities from adversaries, especially Beijing. Recent developments have underscored the urgency of this situation. According to a report from The Hill, there is a growing consensus among policymakers that the U.S. must enhance its defenses against potential cyber and military threats posed by China. The article emphasizes the necessity for the U.S. to protect critical infrastructure and sensitive information from foreign adversaries. As tensions rise, the U.S. must prioritize the security of its technological assets, ensuring that they remain out of the reach of hostile entities. In parallel, the South China Sea has become a flashpoint for conflict. The region witnessed a surge of aggressive actions from China against Philippine vessels in 2024, which included intimidation tactics such as ramming and the use of water cannons. These confrontations prompted the Philippines to embark on a significant military modernization initiative valued at $35 billion. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has sought to bolster national defense in response to China's coercive tactics, which included aggressive maneuvers by the Chinese Coast Guard and military. Carlyle Thayer, a prominent regional expert, noted that the Philippines has taken a proactive stance by enhancing its maritime capabilities and expanding cooperation with the United States and other allies. This includes the implementation of the comprehensive archipelagic defense concept, which aims to improve interoperability among military and civilian agencies. The Philippine government has also engaged in joint military exercises with the US, Australia, and Japan to fortify its defense posture. Amid this backdrop, Vietnam has quietly intensified its military presence in the Spratly Islands, signaling its own preparations for potential conflict in the region. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations (ASEAN) remains divided on the issue, complicating efforts to establish a cohesive code of conduct for the South China Sea. The lack of unity among ASEAN member states has stymied progress, with nations like Cambodia and Laos reportedly blocking proposals that could have strengthened regional security measures. Looking ahead, the situation is poised to escalate further. China's assertive claims over the South China Sea are likely to continue, particularly as it tests the resolve of the US and its allies under the new Trump administration. The Philippines, in turn, is expected to double down on its self-defense measures and seek assurances from the US regarding its commitment to the Mutual Defense Treaty. Vietnam's ongoing infrastructure development in the Spratly Islands will also play a crucial role in shaping the dynamics of the region. As the geopolitical landscape evolves, the US is urged to rethink its approach to defense and manufacturing. Rupert Hammond Chambers, president of the US-Taiwan Business Council, advocates for a robust strategy to bolster the arsenal of democracy by enhancing domestic defense capabilities. This includes re-evaluating relationships with defense contractors to mitigate vulnerabilities from Chinese sanctions and leveraging partnerships with Taiwanese manufacturers to modernize the U.S. defense industrial base. The imperative for the U.S. to safeguard its interests is clear. As adversaries like China become more aggressive, the need for a coordinated response that encompasses military readiness, technological advancement, and international collaboration has never been more pressing. The coming years will undoubtedly test the resolve of the U.S. and its allies as they navigate these complex challenges, aiming to maintain stability and security in an increasingly volatile world. In recent weeks, China has intensified its efforts in what is being termed police diplomacy, an initiative aimed at extending its influence in the developing world while addressing domestic concerns related to citizens' safety abroad. This approach has garnered attention following a significant operation where 200 Chinese nationals were rescued from online scam centers in Myanmar. This repatriation was facilitated by a series of high-profile visits from Liu Zhongyi, China's Assistant Minister for Public Security, who has been actively collaborating with regional authorities to combat cyber fraud, a move that has raised eyebrows due to the associated human rights concerns. This push for police diplomacy is not confined to Southeast Asia. For instance, earlier this month, Chinese liaison officers completed police tactical training for local law enforcement in the Solomon Islands, covering essential topics such as DNA evidence identification and telecommunications fraud investigations. This training is part of a broader strategy to enhance China's image as a security partner in developing nations, particularly as it positions itself as a leader in international law enforcement cooperation. However, while these initiatives may enhance China's standing in some regions, they are also coming under increasing scrutiny from the international community. Analysts have pointed out that while China's efforts may improve bilateral relations with certain countries, they also raise concerns about potential overreach and the implications for human rights in countries struggling with governance issues. China's increasing involvement in police training abroad may be seen as a means to export its own model of governance, which can lead to tensions, particularly in nations with different political values, commented a China-based analyst. Simultaneously, geopolitical dynamics are shifting dramatically as the United States undergoes a significant transformation in its foreign aid strategy. Following a sweeping reorganization under the Trump administration, the United States Agency for International Development (USAID) has been dissolved. Its responsibilities transferred to a newly formed Department of Government Efficiency. This move has raised alarms among foreign policy experts who argue that the cuts will not only undermine U.S. influence globally but also create a vacuum that China is poised to fill. With USAID's budget drastically slashed, programs that provided critical humanitarian aid across the globe are now at risk. The implications of this retreat from global engagement could be severe, with experts warning that the U.S. is sending a message of disengagement, potentially allowing China to redefine the rules of international development. The U.S. is signaling that we don't care whether people live or die and that we're not a reliable partner, stated former USAID Chief Gail Smith, underscoring the potential long-term ramifications of this policy shift as China seeks to fill the void left by the U.S. Its model of development assistance, characterized by high-interest loans rather than grants, raises concerns over creating debt dependency in recipient countries. This strategy could lead to long-term economic ties that favor Chinese interests, thereby reshaping regional dynamics to China's advantage. Furthermore, as the U.S. reduces its economic engagement, countries may increasingly turn to Chinese investments, highlighting a significant shift in global power dynamics. The interplay between China's police diplomacy and the U.S. retreat from foreign aid presents a complex landscape for international relations. While China positions itself as a protector of citizens abroad, the backlash against its methods could lead to heightened scrutiny and resistance from nations wary of authoritarian influences. As the world watches these developments, the future of international diplomacy will likely hinge on how effectively countries balance their security needs with the principles of human rights and democratic governance. As we look ahead, it remains to be seen how these strategies will evolve and what impact they will have on global stability and power relations. The geopolitical chessboard is shifting, and both China and the U.S. will need to navigate these changes with caution, as their actions could have far-reaching consequences for international cooperation and development.